Welcome everybody to Teaching Awards information session. I'm Barbara Komosh. I'm in the Center for Teaching and Learning, educational consultant for curriculum and faculty development. I'm here today with Janine Hertz. She's our senior educational consultant. I'm introducing her as she's walking back to her spot.
Assistant Director in the Center for Teaching and Learning
as well. Thank you again for joining us today. And I'd like to acknowledge that that land on which we gather is in the unceded territory of the Okanagan peoples. And I'm just walking here and seeing the beautiful golden fall colors. I just realized we should update our photo to have an autumn version looking out at our story poles, since it's sky tan now. So you know, sky tan in Insulkshan means the time of falling leaves, and we're really grateful to be here to enjoy that. So our session overview today, Janine will talk to you about the types of awards, both internal and external, that are available to instructors on our campus. A little bit about the application nomination process. Then I will break down the award rubric and also talk about preparing for recognition. And then Janine will provide some tips for preparing a nomination package. And if we haven't answered all your questions, we will definitely do that. Okay, I'll hand it over to Janine.
Okay, so award progression. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different awards. So and in addition to these awards, there are also some discipline specific awards. There might be faculty awards. And so we're not really focusing on those today because we don't know a lot about all those other awards that are out there. But preparing for any of these awards will be, really helpful in any kind of award case. So the awards kind of what we're looking at right now is that we have the Provost Teaching Excellence and Innovation Awards, and we have some past winners here. And so anybody can nominate someone for those awards. So sometimes the nominations come from students, sometimes they come from other faculty members, and then so those will come in, and the deadlines and everything is on the website. And I'm going to actually, maybe you can post the link to the web. I said I was going to do it, but or maybe we won't go to the website quite yet, so we can go to that after. But we're going to show you, and we'll send you the links to all the various websites. But so right now, traditionally is kind of, we want to be looking out for deadlines for nominations, for intentions to nominate, and those are on the website. So the Teaching Excellence and Innovation Award actually has, there's 2 awards for faculty members with continuing appointments. And then there's 1 award for instructors holding a full or part-time limited term appointment. So it's kind of, and I'm gonna, we'll send you these slides with the notes, so you'll have that information there, and I'll also show you where to find it on the website. So, and then the other award that is also through our provost office is the Killam Award. And that one is a nomination by your department head. And so that one needs to be supported at that level. And then we move into the external awards, which is the BC West Coast Teaching Award. So that one's very specific to British Columbia. And that one's just been running for a couple of years, and it comes from it's BC Campus and BC TLC, BC Teaching and Learning Center leadership people. And Stephen McNeil won one of those awards last year from our campus. So there you go. There's a chemistry award, Robert. And and now that one has, so although it's an external award and they have a limit that only 2 awards can come from each institution, only 2 nomination packages. And so we have an internal process here where the intent to nominate would go to Brad, and the deadline is sometime in November. Most of these deadlines are in November. And then from those submissions, 2 people from our campus. So we get 2 people from our campus and 2 people from UBC Vancouver campus are able to go and be nominated and considered for that award. So, and that deadline to submit is the end of February, and we'll have links to that as well. Now, the 3M, it's a national award, so it's one of our most prestigious Canadian awards. And that one can be nominated by almost anybody. It's not for seasoned people, it's for everyone. You don't have to necessarily have received other awards along the way. But I'll be, talking about there is kind of a progression that people typically are expected to have, receive their institutional awards and then maybe a West Coast Teaching Award and then into the 3M, or at least received some other awards generally by the time they get to that level. Yeah.
What does the 3M stand?
I don't know.
It's
3M.
It is the company.
The company 3M.
they sponsor and provide the funding.
And it's through STLHE,
Yeah.
so
So the-
Society of Teaching and Higher Education.
And the conference, their conference was in Prince Edward Island that I got to go to in June, and that's when all the awardees are provided with their awards and celebrated. So it's at that conference.
Yeah, and they're actually given, I think it's $3,000 or something, they're expected to attend STLHE conference, which this coming June will be in Niagara
Cool.
Falls. Yeah, and that one, so I mean, they have a nomination deadline. We didn't really have, so I wasn't aware that there was an internal process, and I saw this come up online. And I think the rationale for the internal process is because the award's going to carry more weight if you have supporting letters from the provost office. And so this is not something that they can put together at the last minute. So they need some, and we'll talk about all the steps that we do typically before you get that final nomination letter, the steps that should come before that. And so there's a rationale for how long these can take. So I would really recommend, I would recommend if someone wants to go for BC West Coast Teaching Award, that they would have had some institutional awards prior. And then if you want to do the 3M, a very natural progression is that people have won institutional awards and then perhaps a bigger regional award to get to 3M.
What's interesting about the 3M awards, there are also team awards, not just individual awards, and there's also student awards. So if you're, interested in that, you might want to check out the website.
Yeah, and West Coast Teaching Awards, I just got off my call before I came here today. We're actually going to allow for people to be nominated as teams as well. One of the things that got highlighted last year is that, especially when people are doing indigenization work, they're often working with a team of people, maybe some community members, instructional designers, a whole group of people. And so they will be able to apply for the award as a team or a group as well, or people who are team teaching and such. So the other awards are individual awards, the Teaching Excellence and Killam Award. Okay, I think, what did I have? I'm not going to talk about, we're looking to add another award that we used to have what was called an honor roll. And so it was the top 10% of faculty as they were recognized through student evaluations or student experience of instruction. It's had many different names over the years. And so Raymond is working to get something like that so we can recognize more of our teaching excellence people. We're not sure what it's going to look like or when it's going to go through, but hopefully there'll be something coming.
So all this year and all debate, we still rely on this question to value professor.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it
The
will be
the
relying.
practice didn't change, even though many academic, they are just.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that will still continue to be the criteria. So yeah, we'll have an opportunity to. Okay, there we go. Application process, that's still me. Okay, yes, so we talked a little bit about the internal versus external intention to nominate deadlines. So we would have said by September for the 3M. I would really, if anybody's going to go for 3M, I would want them to contact us by like June or July. because that's a really big package to get together and there's lots involved. And with the external awards like West Coast Teaching Awards and the 3M, the Center for Teaching and Learning would love to be very involved in supporting you, helping with the format, helping with getting letters together, helping with making sure there's alignment between university strategic goals and the work that you're doing. And, that's part of your representative of our institution. And we are committed to helping people because honestly, when we looked at the West Coast Teaching Awards, the people that were awarded those awards generally came from bigger institutions where they had support to help put the packages together. So please make sure that you're taking advantage of those supports that are there. Most of the other awards, the intention to nominate is in November, and and that goes to the provost office intention to nominate, and those are internal. And so the way that CTL can help support with those is by just helping with the teaching philosophy statement or doing a bit of an overview. But honestly, one of the CTL people sits on that adjudication committee typically. And so in all fairness, we can advise on different pieces of it and just help to make sure that it's, in really good alignment and using some of that great pedagogical language that people want to see in those teaching awards. There is an award rubric, so you always want to look at the rubrics or the criteria. West Coast calls it guidelines, because this will really be your step-by-step checkbox of everything that you need to do. It's really critical to identify who is helping you. So it's good to have, either your head or a really trusted colleague, someone who's going to be your partner in putting these things together. There is a lot of work for the faculty member being nominated. There's no two ways around that. And people who have been nominated, put together packages know that it's not without some work being done for sure. So who's going to help you to solicit those support letters with the nomination, with preparing the package and doing the formatting, reviewing and editing, and internally and then externally, the CTL wants to really be one of your partners with that.
Sorry, can I step back for one question?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So I noticed in the application packages and nomination, so is it, a head can also be the nominator?
Yeah.
So in the event that the head is the nominator, the support letter for the head is the same as the nomination letter? Are those looked at differently, that if you don't have a nominator and your head is the nominator, that you only have one letter?
That's for our internal awards?
Yes.
Yeah, Raymond, can you help with that one?
I've been on this committee a couple times. I would actually say, don't make your head your nominator so you can get two different letters in. Not that they're reviewed any differently, but it would give you two different perspectives a little bit. So you're not disadvantaged by having your head the nominator, but the nominator has a lot of work and you normally don't want to assign that to the head anyways. You want somebody else.
There's never enough work to do. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Great question. So those of you that if you registered, you should have received an email with a confirmation reminder with the link to the provost office webpage where you could find all the information, or we could send that again. Overview of the different awards, who can be nominated, as well as the rubrics. I want to clarify that there's one rubric that is used by the committee for both the Killam Award and the Provost Award as well. So there are three criteria, and the first one is educational leadership, and that might be a little bit like, what is educational leadership? So I've pulled out a few of the descriptors from the rubric, but please look at the rubric in depth. So some of these could seem intimidating, like how can I be leading significant long-term transformation around teaching and learning? But it could be something as simple as you identifying a current need, like maybe around generative AI, and you have an idea and it seems to be working in your classes, and you connect with other faculty members in your department, other departments, it kind of spreads. You have a community of practice around it, right? And then all of a sudden, change starts, right? So you don't have to, it starts a little at a time, so it doesn't have to be, seem so overwhelming that way. Around supporting change for more inclusive, equitable, diverse landscape could be, you say, well, I'd like to make computer labs or wet labs more accessible. What does that look like? That would be really amazing if that's something that you're exploring. And again, probably not individually, right? There's probably other people that are involved, but you could be kind of the instigator, the leader for that effort. Around same thing, impact of course design. If you've made changes around assessment in your class and have something integrated that's working with Canvas, and then you share it with other people in your department and outside the department and outside the faculty, and people are recognizing, wow, this is really great that you have this new assessment tool. They can speak for you and recognize the impact, right? That's what we're talking about. And then it could be that you're engaging with an organization in your discipline, and you're helping organize conference sessions around teaching and learning. That would be a meaningful engagement. It could be that you're working with people in industry to revamp a course to make it more meaningful, applying work-based skills in that industry. So it has to be something that comes from a need and also, relevant to what you're interested in, right? In what you're teaching. So a little bit of their educational leadership. So teaching excellence, automatically, I think we tend to think, oh, student, SEIs, student experience of instruction. Yes, those are included as well. Teaching observations, things like that. But just as important are things like your reflection on your SEIs, of any feedback that you received, formative feedback that you collect from your students, and be able to reflect and say, oh, I've made these changes in my teaching, in my instruction, my practices based on this feedback from students and colleagues. So creating exceptional learning environments, that's also in the teaching excellence category. This, I think, should come from your teaching philosophy and be connected to that. So what is really important? How do you define exceptional learning environment? Is it about building community? Is it engagement? Is it that you want students to always find relevance in what you teach to their lives and in the careers they might go into? So depending on what is important to you, then you can talk about how you creating that learning environment. And then the scholarly teaching is really important, because you could say, oh, there's a need in my class, and I'm going to start, develop a strategy or apply a strategy. But if you haven't actually gone out and read the literature and talked to others and know how are other people doing this? How are they doing it? And you're developing these ideas in a vacuum, then it doesn't have as much impact potentially when you're putting a package together that you don't know what else is going on in this area of whatever you're trying to implement. And let's see, I think and the last thing that I have here is student-related activities. So it could be that you have really creative office hours where you're, I'm bringing my pet to campus, and come meet me in the courtyard and ask me your questions or something. And I'm here going to be there for, an hour and a half, because I'm, hanging out and I'm doing things, and you can come meet my pet. It could be that you're involved in a student club, right? So we're looking for other committee members. We're going to be looking for other things than just what you're doing in the classroom when you're thinking about teaching excellence.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So what things like people who are involved in things like program advising, that kind of stuff, where does that fall? Does that fall in that area, or does that fall in educational leadership?
I-
They've taken a lot of roles in helping students with not specific courses, but in terms of their education here, their continuing education.
Might be a question for Raymond, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
program development and change would fall into more into educational leadership. Any comments, Raymond?
Yeah, anything that you're doing advising and things like that would be more on your leadership and your service, because it's outside the classroom.
Okay.
And other things that involve in that, creating new courses, curriculum design, those also kind of falls in similar areas as well.
I'm wondering about the involving student-related activities, like maybe if you're can be combined around some experiential learning opportunities, students as partners, that type of thing, maybe.
Yeah, if it's,
Yeah, maybe if you have an innovative lab course, for instance, or you take them out on field trips, that's something distinctive. So that would be student-related activities, which is more related to the classroom than a service or design role.
Mhm.
I don't think I'd also get caught up too much in the distinctions. I know you have to kind of put it in what criteria it would be. But if it does interface with the two, you could do both lenses on it, for instance, if you do think it crosses categories as well.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
so educational innovation, which I think can also sound a bit intimidating in this novel creation, innovation, ongoing improvement of various activities, interventions. But it could be something that, again, that you have developed that is working well in your class. And I think what's key here is that it's going to have impact and potentially applicable beyond your own teaching context. So if you've developed a new assessment, combine some teaching strategies, experimenting with the experiential learning or community-based learning or land-based pedagogy or something, that you're connecting with other people that are also interested in the same kinds of things and sharing those ideas, because there's more than the possibility of other people saying, oh, I want to try that out as well. If you go into conferences and talking about it and then keeping in touch with those people, then again, there's that impact. Like, how do you demonstrate impact in your package? You want to do that and have some evidence of that. And it could also be outside of academic communities or even, K-12. I think it doesn't have to be necessarily higher education where you're having impact. And then demonstrate use of support inclusive practices to support innovation. So anytime that you're thinking about, I'm innovating in the classroom and I'm considering that maybe people that see color differently or that are left-handed, like how does their learning impacted by what they have to do? And so if you've identified a barrier and you're working to maybe not specifically deal with that barrier, but in your innovation, if that also addresses certain barriers for certain people, and then you can highlight that, then I would say that's a definite plus. So those are the 3 categories in the rubric. Any questions?
When we send you the PowerPoint, we'll add a slide with the links to all the rubrics and the pages. You can.
The relative ratios of these 3 pillars of the is it 30-30-30 or looking at a general overview or just excellence in one area with support from the other or just can be one.
Right. So the question, I'll repeat the question, is about the ratio of, is it 30-30-30 in terms of how much an applicant and your nominee meets the criteria. I think it's, you definitely need to address all 3 categories because there's a score given in each category. There's maybe more descriptors of rubrics. So when you look at the rubric, there's a whole list of bullets. And so the idea is like, you can't do them all, right? But they're all options for considerations in those categories. And so you want to be looking at how many can I tick off, not just number wise, but depth wise. It could be that one is that you're giving conference presentations, you're sharing, right, your educational innovation. It won't need as much depth as some of these that are innovation. So I wouldn't say, I think some of the packages that we've seen are definitely maybe, have more depth and more numbers ticked in one of these categories. But I think it's overall, looking at overall how somebody meets the three. So I don't know, Raymond, I wouldn't say it's like an equal 30 at all.
And that's a valid question. Like some award criteria, say research grants from MedCerts, they say it's 60% researchability or whatever. To my knowledge, none of these grants explicitly list percentages. So I don't think you feel like you have to be strong in one area. I think the committee looks at all areas. I do agree that breadth is important if possible. And I unmuted because I want to emphasize when I'm on the committee, one of my career criteria is this impact applicability beyond your classroom. And you can demonstrate that multiple ways, whether that's publications, that's other instructors adapting the techniques that you're using, or maybe you've created a course that is key to the program that's now going forward. But that's what differentiates people who have good student experience surveys, but they're good teachers in their class. But many of these awards are asking, how have you had impact beyond your class? And so there's multiple ways of demonstrating that, but that is a key message that should come across in the application, if possible.
So I seem to recall in the website, there's a statement that says you have to demonstrate strength in 2 of the 3 areas at least.
Oh, is that right?
Is that true? Like, is that?
I think so.
valid?
And has that changed? Because I thought it was 4 areas before, but yes, you have to demonstrate in multiple areas that you have a strength. That's always been the case.
I seem to recall, I looked at the website, it says there's 2, you have to show 2 or 3 of these areas at least.
Okay. Yeah,
So not
which would
one, you
make
can't use one, like
sense.
teaching
Yeah.
excellence as one, but you have to
You
have 2 or
need a
3.
couple
yeah.
at least, yeah.
We have Kristen on, she could tell us if we're wrong, but.
Ivan?
So when I write my statement, do I have to classify it as a rubric? For example, I put activities under education innovation, or I leave it to the reviewer to extract which belong to what?
Yeah, I think you weave it in. Yeah. So
But I don't have to put subtitle like education innovation. For
no,
example, except I will leave it for you to
I don't
see
think
which one
that-
to fit in.
trying to remember the ones I looked
Oh,
at. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Raymond.
Who's speaking?
Hyman,
And what's his discipline?
engineering.
Engineering.
Okay, so if you're writing an insert grant, they have particular categories, and a good grant writer will explicitly put the category heading and address those particular items under the category. The best
Okay.
letters I see do exactly that. They say, here's the criteria, here is where this person demonstrates this criteria, and they don't leave it to the reviewer to figure out. Just like when you're writing grants, you don't.
This
leave it
actually
to
will
the
make our
reviewer to
life
figure out.
easy. Thank you. This will make it easier
Yeah.
for us.
And the West Coast Teaching Award actually requires that you have headers for each of the parts. So that's pretty explicit.
Yeah, I mean, it helps the reviewers that you have those categories. Yeah, it really does. And thank you. Kristen has shared with me, but I will read this out loud. So here's the language. Candidates will have demonstrated excellence in 2 of 3 categories, all of which also demonstrate an intentional commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism. So yeah, there were previously 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And the pillars were updated in 2022 to be 3 categories. So I think the idea is that to emphasize that excellence in 2 of the 3 categories, but we haven't seen where like there's not touched upon the 3rd category at all, right? Like you can address all 3, but excellence like in 2 of the 3. Okay, thank you so much.
In the intro, I'm going to kind of go through this part quickly because I touch a lot more on these and when we talk about the tips later. So always, make sure you're reviewing the criteria. You get your checklist. Start early. Don't leave it to the last. One thing CTL doesn't like to do is have someone sends and says, can someone look at this package like it's due next week? Like we need time to really give good constructive feedback, as will anybody else who's supporting you. solicit your letters of support and really be intentional about this. Like, what are you looking for in each of those letters? Who's going to be able to give you that bit of support? Collect your data, your SEI and any other data that you may have collected informally from your students, and evidence. Create your narrative. You are going to want to tell a story in a part of your nomination package, and that can be really important to tie all the pieces together. Don't be too modest. People are too modest. Make sure that you are, and maybe that's why it's good to have someone you trust helping you toot your own horn, because there are some people doing amazing things, and they're just modest in their writing. And so, and ensure really good alignment, that you've got, the criteria, your letters of support, evidence, strategic goals, everything is aligning and supporting that narrative that you're going to have about your teaching excellence. And I am going to, we'll do some tips later, and I'll talk a little bit more about those.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please do.
With regard to like the provost supports and that, is it the letters of support? How, like, do we have to have some from students? Do we have to have from faculty? What's the best, can you give a recommendation of balance? Where do you want to see letters from?
Yeah, for the Teaching Excellence Awards internally, I believe that they ask specifically that you need to have one from a student, one from a peer, one from your dean. I can't remember
I think one
exactly.
from your head, right? But the question is, I mean, can you have more than?
So every award is a little bit different. Some of them say, a minimum of 5 letters, but then like the West Coast, I think it's a minimum of 3 to 5 letters, but then they limit the whole package to a certain number of pages. So you really need to be strategic. You can't just fill it up with letters of support. That won't get you the award.
We have Kristen to the rescue as well.
Okay.
Selected letters are referenced from students and or colleagues. So up to 5 letters may be included. So there is a limit. At a minimum, 1 letter must be from a student and 1 letter must be from a UBC peer.
And Raymond, did you have something to add, or?
I think all that comments are good. I would just echo, be strategic.
Yeah.
Don't have 4 letters from students that sound all the same. Besides a student in the classroom, if this person has supervised a student on a research or teaching related project, especially one that has accomplished something, that's also a good letter to include. And then obviously choose your faculty members strategically who have something unique to say. Maybe they co-taught with somebody, maybe they use the materials that person did. Each letter should tell a story if possible. You don't need 5 letters that say they're an excellent teacher. That comes up with other places.
Thanks, Raymond. So just like to touch upon preparing for recognition. So maybe you think, wow, this is overwhelming. Like, how do I even get to the point where I can be nominated? Or maybe you have a new faculty member that you hired in your assistant professor, or lecturer, you want to support them through this process. Like, where do you start? And so if you could think about this in the micro, macro, and meso level, where micro is the classroom, the individual level, and there could be experimentation going on and things around improving teaching and working on reflecting and attending conferences. And then the person moves on to the macro level, where they're working together in collaboration with others in the CTL and sharing what they've done, and leading a seminar in the department, and maybe even something at the faculty level. And then meso really kind of the system level, and they're going to provincial and national, international conferences, and thinking about the publication and having an impact more at the system-wide level, and thinking what you could do. So you can kind of start small and then move big. So here's some examples, and I want to point out that I have on the left bar SOTL law levels, so scholarship of teaching and learning. Some of these examples can be taken to the point where it's actually research around teaching and learning, and that's a whole other kind of conversation and an information session on how to do SOTL. But just keep that in mind, that it could be research on teaching that you're collecting evidence for in the classroom, and then that moves out, to the macro meso level, just like we have the examples here. So at that individual micro level, again, you're innovating with teaching strategies, assessment delivering, could be you're co-creating with students, and you're collecting evidence as you go along, and then you're reflecting on the midpoint. You have a midpoint survey that you do, and then your SEI. And so again, this is at the individual level, and then moving out, you're engaging at the unit level. So maybe you're serving on a curriculum committee, and you're organizing a seminar, you're sharing your results of what's working in the classroom for you. Maybe you're already, start collaborating with community, indigenous groups or industry, and then attending workshops. And at the CTL, we have a lot of new opportunities to get involved. There's the Faculty Fellows Program. So if you have a project in mind that you'd like to do together with the CTL, community as a practice, where you can come together with other instructors or interested. Right now we have specifically community practice around teaching and educational leadership. So if you're thinking about going up for awards, then I highly recommend that you join this community practice.
We're having our first meeting in November.
First meeting in November. We have information on our website about that. So again, you see that's kind of moving out and getting involved outside the classroom. And then at the meso level, sharing your innovations at conferences, publications with the general public, and then really thinking about how do my innovations, my successes in the classroom, how are they also aligning with Indigenous strategic plan? Maybe you're really interested in open educational research, or inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, anti-racism, and again, transformational change. Then when you've already been doing this work, it's easier to kind of recognize what needs to change, who your partners are, who you can work with, expanding your network, and then it's easier to put that package together. So, all right.
Okay. And then some tips for nomination. We were like, this tips for the nominator, for the nominee, and because it's a team effort. And so these tips will apply to different people in the different roles, but really understanding the criteria and guidelines and having, another set of eyes that can help you look at those is really helpful. And definitely for the external awards, that's something that CTL can do. We can make sure that we're having a really good objective look at those guidelines and criteria. Start early. I just can't emphasize that enough. And it's almost like you start when you start teaching, like start your reflections about your teaching, collecting evidence, reflecting on your student evaluations and how this is helping you to make changes and adjustments. Start collecting your materials, the content that you're going to put into that award package. And we talked about it a little bit, and Raymond, every committee, especially for the bigger awards, but even our internal awards, you want to have letters of support that align with the criteria and your supporting materials, and you don't want it to be repetitive. So one of the things we learned was when we're soliciting letters of support, we might even be we need to be specific and tell people how to format it, how long it should be. For West Coast teaching, for instance, we don't want it to be more than 1 page long because we have such limited space. And so we might support from one person and say, can you talk about how we decolonized in the classroom? And do you remember when you helped me to develop this assessment? Can you talk about that? And really being very, very intentional and asking for the specific because sometimes we've got letters that just one person said the same thing as another. So it's really important. And who that is, the nominee is the person who's going to know who can best write those letters to support that thing that they're looking to highlight in their package. And then just even giving ideas, and I know as CTL, if you're doing West Coast or 3M, we're gonna help you get those letters of support, because I think it's easier for us to go back and say, hey, you know, can you talk a little bit more about, or give an example? It's great if they can give examples as well, right? So they decolonize the curriculum by doing this. So really being able to, you know, provide that evidence. Review the teaching philosophy, and might even talk about how your teaching philosophy changed over time. You know, if you're a more seasoned faculty, or the person you're nominating is more seasoned. And that's definitely something that the CTL can help review that teaching philosophy. Sometimes it's a philosophy statement, sometimes it's a 2-page philosophy that they're writing about. Yeah, and avoid repetition and repetitive content throughout the whole thing. Ensuring a supportive narrative. And this is, sometimes we found that some faculty have a little bit difficulty writing that story. And we were told in the West Coast Teaching Award that was one of the things that really helped the winners, was the people who could, the faculty member who said, you know, I'm for this award, I've been doing this in my teaching, and I reflected on these this feedback from my students, and I got some help from, you know, CTL or Indigenous initiatives. And so just putting the whole, and just writing it as a narrative and creating that story so that it tells the story of your teaching progression and how, and why you are deserving of the award, or why the person is. Now the nominator letters and letters of, well, letters of support is different. The nominator letter, and then especially for most of these, you're going to also get a letter of support from the provost office. They do that last. So this is the other reason why you need to have everything ready ahead of time, because your nomination letter and your provost support letter, we send them the whole package. So the whole package should be pretty much ready and done. They look at the entire package. They take great care. And I know Kristen's there because we kept saying, you know, the deadline, you've got to do it, because they really take great care in looking at that whole package, and they do a beautiful sort of summary and highlighting, and usually, you know, trying to add other little bits of information that they might have gained through talking with the nominee. So I have to say that those letters were just incredibly beautifully crafted, and they make a really big difference. So, but everything else has to be ready so that they can draw from that package. Have reviewers that you really trust, who are going to give you really good feedback and help you make any changes that you might need to make. And then make sure you've got, if you hate formatting, like the CTL will help you format. We've got templates for the BC, for the West Coast Teaching Award, and we'll create one for 3M. I haven't done it yet, but I will. And so that we can just help collect the content, collect the pieces, and put it together. Because formatting, a lot of them have real strict guidelines about font size, margins, page numbers, formatting, have headers, have divider pages. And so all of that, and it should all be in one PDF file only. When you get a package that's got like 10 different files that each reviewer has to open separately, it makes it really tough to have that consistency. So I think, I don't know, are there other tips, Barbara or Raymond, that you can think of? Raymond, I know you've done a lot of adjudicating and put together some packages.
I think you've done a good job articulating the items on this slide. I don't think, I just follow those would be my best advice, I would say.
Okay.
So can I ask, like, so obviously the provost letter, we don't need those for the PF, like the provost awards or the Killam.
Right.
Those are only for
Yeah,
the
for the
West Coast
external
or
awards.
external awards.
Yeah.
Except please only send one file.
Yeah, they
Like,
still
so only
have
one
that.
file, yeah,
Like
still-
just merge them, like opening 12 files.
So that goes back to the statement that we UBC peer for excuse me, for a faculty member. Does it have to be another faculty member? So you say, well, get a peer, someone you worked with, someone, if they haven't taught, but maybe they've done a program with somebody in CTL. Can that CTL be a UBC?
I have
Or a
definitely,
person with a library?
yeah, I have definitely written letters of support for
Okay.
teaching packages. So yeah,
Okay, so though, I mean, we're not saying just faculty members, we're saying a UBC person involved
Yeah.
in education and leadership or anything. like that
Yeah,
could be
I've
that
written
person
letters
as
of
well.
support for Killam package as well, so.
Kristen
Okay.
says, yep, Kristen confirms, I've had letters of support from staff before.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
Question,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, I would say though that like, so the nominator who's writing the big overarching letter, still would be nice to have the whole package, and then that letter should, you know, very much reflect and align with what's in the package. Sort of capture it all, and so you read that nomination letter first, because often first thing in the package, and you read that and you, it kind of sets the stage, so you know what to expect. It sets the story and you know what's coming next, and you look for those things.
Good question,
And
Robert.
so, as I was thinking through all this, it's like, sounds to me like as a skeleton, with all the bones and everything, all of these, so. Do I oversimplify it if I say that, let's say a colleague is coming and, would like to apply for an award or compete for an award, that first potential filter would be is to what is your story? What is your, because if I just look at this, I could, I mean, myself probably will never receive a teaching award, but I will go through, I could kind of pull together things that, and then put together that 5, 6, 10 pages. But I would feel like that would be like a patchwork, that wouldn't be really competitive versus that, I had this idea when I was a graduate student and none of my professors did it. And then I started as a postdoc. And so kind of like developing a story that has intellectual, emotional, God forbid, spiritual part to all of that. And then I have that story. And then bring in all of these, I support my story. Would that be a strategy to, and not just a strategy, because I said that I want all the awards to go to chemistry, but the winning strategy
I think
based on the past, that last few years of experience.
I think that any packages that I've ever supported, the faculty member has had a real passion for something that they're doing, because it takes some stamina to get through doing a package. I think, you know, Raymond, you know, Iman, I know you've gone to ward. I'm not sure about everybody on the call, but it's not super, it takes some time and effort. And so I think you have to have a passion, and there's got to be something that really stands out for you, and then they're going to look for those extra things. I think our awards as well, that inclusion, you know, equity, diversity lens, that Indigenous lens, and
Yeah, and along those lines, the Indigenous land, so, yeah, I admit with some jealousy, I say that for like social sciences, arts, you know, it's a little bit, I think, easier than, let's say, a quantum state of a photoionized electron that's interacting. So, if someone, and I know there are ways to present it, but someone doesn't have that, is that kind of detrimental? Like likely not going to be selected?
Raymond's gonna jump in, I think, on this one.
Yeah, well, I've won this award and I did not have a lot of Indigenous background in my application. Now that's a few years ago, but still, what we can do in science and engineering is the equity lens. What was in my package is focusing on how I supported women or underrepresented minorities in science and engineering. That might be more into the space of where you're at. So my point is, you don't have to check off all the boxes, but it's nice to have some depth somewhere with that equity lens that you can have. And you probably, most of the people who would be eligible for this award probably do something related to it, even though it's not maybe the Indigenous checkbox, if you want to do it that, think about it that way.
If you allow me to add, you don't have explicitly, you meant for initiative targeting EDI. Maybe there is something out of the scope you did it, but it has impact on the EDI. Like, you don't have specifically to plan from now for 2 years to have EDI initiative. Maybe you did something in your classroom, or you did something on the online teaching which allow more student accessibility. So this is inclusion. I mean, you don't have explicit to think of EDI as a goal by itself. Even myself, I won the award as well. I didn't think I planned everything with the perspective of EDI. But as Raymond said, I did lots of work, which maybe with the school district to attract more female students. So this is EDI. So I didn't do it for the sake of EDI, but indirectly it is an EDI. So.
And I think having those reflective practices where you're identifying the gaps, like who's not performing, who's being left behind in my classes, international students or whatever. So if you're doing that reflection at the individual level, then you're maybe in talking with others, maybe identify like, oh, we need to address this together. So it doesn't have to be something that you also do alone. But I think definitely the story is important because stories grab us, right? They're gonna remember that, right? When everybody has to read, everybody on the committee reads all the applications and then comes together to discuss. So if you read a story, you're gonna remember that, right? About somebody's journey, about how they incorporate certain strategies or made changes and had impact on their students and beyond. So, yep.
So I have another question, maybe,
Yep.
maybe yourself or Raymond can answer this, is that it's a kind of a very specific question. In the course of this, as a current head, I'd be writing a head's letter. And what is the role of the head's letter with regard to this? Like from a nominator standpoint, they're going to talk about their perspective of the person, but what are you looking from the head? Are you looking for the longitudinal aspect of this person's career? And like, we don't just reiterate what the nominator
Right,
is
don't
saying.
do that. Yes, please.
But what is it the head is trying to contribute in these packages? What are you looking for from the heads?
Right, Janine and I talked, I'll let Raymond also weigh in. Janine and I talked about this a little bit earlier before the session. I think, yes, that could be the longitudinal, but how long have you been head? But hopefully if you've been with the department, you know, while you have that perspective, but also that current impact of that instructor on the student, on the program, on even maybe the passion, the curiosity with other instructors.
Okay.
So it's that program level that only you have, because maybe you hear a conversation in the hall or instructor comes to you and tells me, oh, because so-and-so is doing this, I'm going to try this too. They may not know that, but you have those insights and the impact on the program and even beyond, right? Even beyond the program, I think would be important. So Raymond, you have other thoughts on the department head letter?
I think that's a great question. I kind of like to see a little bit of summary, not duplicating the other letter, but a little bit of summary. But I agree, you want to have that higher level context. There's things that head sees that individual faculty members don't see. For instance, you might have a better perspective on how this person has an impact on the department or the program overall, where individual faculty members might not have that same level of confidence to express that. Or even comparators are tough, but some idea of how this person has made an impact. You want to rank them against other people, but you kind of have that global perspective that an individual faculty member doesn't see. Because as a head, you see some additional information that other faculty members don't see. And you might.
Yeah, so you're looking for that relative impact statement is basically what I get that. That's what I was asking. Can we put that in the letters?
You just got to be strategic on how you do it, obviously,
Right.
right? Because that's very tough. But you sometimes a head can say, this person made such a difference because we were putting this program together and this program wouldn't have went without this person. And that holds more weight when you're coming from that higher level compared to if you're an individual faculty member. I use that as an example, but there's others that you kind of have a better global perspective and your voice in your letter will have more weight when you address those ideas.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
we're at the top of the hour. I don't see any other questions in chat. We will
Can I
send the
have
slides, yeah?
one final question, ma'am? If my head or director just been appointed, what should I do? And he's not aware of many of the indirect impact I did for that place. Should I go for someone else, maybe one senior faculty member to support me, or it has to come from the head?
That the letter has to come from your head for support, but I would recommend do the things that I sometimes ask students to do. If they want a letter from me, I say, you write some of this and then I will do the edits. So make it easy for the people who's writing your letter. You can help them by giving them some points, especially if they're new to the position and they might not be aware. They might change it, they might not agree with it, but at least you're helping the people write a letter that's more conducive to your application.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment there, Raymond? Would it be as suitable in that case also to have maybe a head ask senior colleagues who have some connection to those people to provide, like help write a letter? Yes, it comes from the head, but it could be a composition of senior administrators within a department or school or something like that.
I don't personally have a problem with it, because to me, it's collecting information and making the case. That's my opinion anyways. I
Okay.
don't know what others think.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll be sending some follow-up information